I good? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. No. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I want to start with a toast. Here's to all of you. And specifically, I want to toast to Mylene, my dear colleague in Strand E, because today she sustained me. She saved the day by bringing me a cup of coffee, which was necessary because the cafeteria wasn't doing. Thank you so much for that. And that's in a way a little metaphor or a little anecdote of what the day gives us early in the morning. What are those elements, those items, those experiences that sustain us? Today we're going to talk about sustainability beyond the metaphor. Educators are as critical ecological agents. Okay, let's unpack some of those words. But before that, let me introduce myself and also tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from. I combine a number of positions around the idea of language and the idea of activism, of making a difference. The coordinator of Bilingüismo and Justicia, Bilingualism and Justice, in the Teacher Education Department that prepares bilingual teachers in San Jose State, Northern California. I'm also a core faculty of the Educational Doctorate Program at San Jose State, the director of the Stanford World Language Project, and the president of the California Association for Bilingual Teacher Educators. That's a lot to do, but the good thing is that those things get along very well, precisely because of what I'm going to tell you about today. This idea of language and ecology, how things are intertwined, and now how we can avoid getting from a vicious cycle and getting into a harmonious cycle. And that's what we would like to think about today. So first, what I want for us today, I would like to connect with our identities and motivations to be world language educators. There must be some identity in you that you decide to spend your days here with us in Santa Barbara, as opposed to lying on the beach under the sun, etc. There's a drive. Let's connect with that. Connect with our context and our potential, that is our ecology. California is very diverse. We know that here we even have people outside of California and beyond. Everywhere we are, language plays a different role. The people interact around it in different ways, and that's our role to gauge it and also see, okay, where can we go next? I also want to connect with language, its diversity, and how it exists around us, even right here, right now. What is language we are going to be thinking of? And finally, I would like to promote dialogue and to sustain. Because they are going to notice a few things about today. My presentation is more about back and forth. It's dialogic. It's about you doing the talking. It can also be fast-paced because this is who I am, etc. And because I'm caffeinated, yeah. And there's also something that tries to provoke. Those of you who are with me in Strand E, you know that I'm in charge of the section provocation of the day. And that's what I do. I like to, okay, you know, going beyond the rah, 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 and more into the, you let me thinking. So I would be very happy if you come out of here with more questions rather than answers. I mean, sorry, I know it sounds like sustainer. Yes, I mean, questions. So, EduSpeak. Why am I bringing this up? Because we are masters at that. I would like to get a popcorn style. What are the different EduSpeak terms that we have all the time creating in our profession? Anybody? UDL. UDL.
21st century learners. PLC. Global citizens.
Global citizens.
Backwards planning.
Oof. And then imagine the amount of terms that we have. Just, I teach also for English learners, and we have EL, Emerging Bilingual, RFEP, IFEP. We have 504. I mean, literally. So, Jacques, our profession is very guilty of creating these things that make us sound like, okay, what is it that we are talking about? Is this really about kids? Is it really about life? But now, what I'm going to do is bring you another. Sorry. I mean, I'll apologize beforehand, but Let me tell you about my love story with this one and why I would like it for you to make a little room in your heart for this one, for the nuances that it provides, and hopefully we can unpack it together. You may have heard it. This is not anything new as of yesterday, but I would like to tell you how I'm implementing this in San Jose State, how this takes place at Stanford World Language Project, and I try to put seeds of this everywhere I go. This is culturally sustaining pedagogies. So here we go, the sustaining. So we have two guys here, Sami Alim and Diego Pares. Who are these guys? Well, these guys are known particularly for looking down on their cameras, number one, obviously. And number two, because they came up with this article and this notion of the culturally sustaining pedagogies that was in a way in the making. I mean, it was necessary. And it is this idea of like, what are we seeking to sustain? So let me pose it to you for the first time in your tables, in your groups. Talk to your partner, to your buddy. They say this in their article. What are we seeking to sustain? Talk to your partner. What are we seeking to sustain? What we may have noticed is that we are seeking to sustain some common things, some different things, but that definitely we want to push something up. We want to make something exist, persist, not be turned into sameness of everything else, to nourish a distinctiveness. This is the article that they were calling, What Are We Seeking to Sustain Through Culturally Sustaining Pedagogy? A loving critique forward. Why a loving critique? Well, because they are responding to Gloria Ladson-Billings, who was talking about the culturally relevant pedagogies. So say, okay, hold on a second. CRP, CESP, what's the point of this? Is it really worth adding yet another? Well, I think that there is a just cause. It's not potato. In CRP, in culturally relevant pedagogies, they present how school needs to take from the community and needs to be brought into the community. The community needs to be brought into schools. And then there's a representation and there is a relevance. My experience is in the school. Well, in CSP, there's a little nuance. It's like Gloria Ladson-Billings also call it like the CRP 2.0, like the next level. It is that actually we are taking the school to the community. It is that the community becomes the school. It is a changing lens. Because in reality, for so many years, as long as we hear from CRP, it was something that was starting to be talked about in the 1990s. What has happened since then? Actually, even Gloria Ladson-Billings would say that until 2016, when a professor from Stanford published for the first time a quantitative study saying that culturally relevant pedagogies mattered, that now is when it's going to matter. Not for the 20 years that we've been talking about, but only now that we have quantitative studies. Well, there's a problem with that. And there's also a problem with terms getting worn off. How many times we talk about this and what do they mean in reality? We see lots of people talking about CRP. Okay, but we need to take it to the next level. That's what I see in CSP. So what we are trying to do in San Jose State, where I'm preparing pre-service teachers, and at Stanford, where we are preparing teachers from all different trajectories and levels of experiences, we want to, first of all, in education, sustain our students, clearly. The kiddos, the pre-K-12 kiddos that are right there. But then, in order to do that, we also need to sustain our student teachers. Because often, they are coming not having been sustained themselves. And they are presenting an experience that's unique. And ultimately, we also need to sustain the teacher leaders and educators like you that are passing on this information to others. So it is an ecology of being sustained. Sustain to sustain to sustain. Because it is not, how are we going to expect teachers to just be that nourishing and that welcoming and embracing of the student experiences if they themselves have not experienced that kind of kindness, as we should have done in the university, for example. But then at the same time, in the university, or like right here, because many of you, if not, well, maybe already are like mentor teachers, are experiencing that feeling of like, okay, how about my own experience? So it's a change, it's a virtuous chain. Now, I also want to think that this idea of the ecology of sustainability is not just a matter of like the teachers. Actually, sustainability for languages, and as we are talking about climate crisis, is more than a metaphor. Look at that. So you see connections between how languages and communities and experiences get impacted by, so everything is interconnected. But I'm not going to go down this route because it's not what I wanted to present, but just to tell you that all these things are interconnected and that we must take a position. Staying, I mean, it reminds me of how we're seeing this idea of like, can you be neutral in a moving train? I mean, it's a call. So our CSP principles, this is what we do in San Jose State and Stanford Language Project are these 7 principles, and I'm going to be presenting them to you now, and also giving you time to react to them. Number 1, epistemological and ontological revision. What is this? These are the words that I normally use when I try to scare flies in my home because they are not going away by any other means. Epistemology and ontology are horrendous words just as you look at them, but we are going to try to unpack them because you have to deal with them whether you like it or not. Ontology is understanding the nature of things, and epistemology is understanding how we understand things. And that's your business. You present things as if they are facts, and we need to look, it's really a fact, mostly in the times of post-truth. And you also are into the making of knowledge, and that is epistemology. So there's generative questions. What needs to be known? Often, as teachers, we get curricula, we get books, and I remember that from the beginning when I started. It was so good that the books were telling me what to do, but is that what needs to be known in my community? I remember when the other day our CLTA 2024 teacher of the year was saying, well, they want us to be standardized. Well, that's what the books are going to do, making the land even. What needs to be known? What is the local meaning of what needs to be known? The other day in the presentation about Hawaii, we heard this quote: I would like to get into a school in Hawaii, close my eyes, and be sure that this is Hawaii and nowhere else that it could have been, that I could have gotten into by accident. What is to know specifically, to learn in each of your locales that is nowhere else different? In my case, what is to learn in San Jose that is different from San Leandro, from Oakland, from San Diego? Yeah, it's California, but what is different there, even if nuances? And ultimately, what are our situated ways of knowing? How do you learn where you are, as opposed to how they learn in Illinois or how they learn in Bulgaria? So look at that. Wondering about what we need to learn. What do we need to learn? Standard language, academic language, pure language. Well, when we think about these constructs, let's take a look at this. If power relations were reversed, what you and I speak would be considered a degenerate dialect that you need to get people out of so that they would be able to think. Well, this is the issue with language. This is talking about good English, Noam Chomsky, one of the, as you may know, one of the most important linguists and more in the 20th and 21st century. But if we are to think about what is good Spanish, good French, good Japanese, good you name it, what is that? Is just pure language? We need to rethink it. We need to rethink it. Similarly, word language, the local and the global. I was saying, what are the situated ways of knowing where you are? When you're thinking about math, for example, or science, you may say, well, let's see how we learn math and science in San Jose applied to our reality. When we are talking about word language, I notice a tension, because what you are having is kind of centrifugal forces. You say, okay, we need to learn the culture of France or Quebec or South Africa or any of the external to the US countries where these experiences are happening. There is a force we need to learn about what's happening out there. But then there's also the centripetal force of like, how do we learn about French or Japanese or Spanish here that is different from other places? It feels a little bit like you're being stretched in two different directions. But eventually, there's a magic word that will save us, global. Yeah, the word will save us. Okay, we're saved. No, it's much more complicated than that. We need to, how do we navigate those two tensions? The word will not just do it for us. But in a way, what is to learn French in the context where you are? What is to learn Spanish in the context where you are? You know, and this brings me to an anecdote. When I was with a group of advocates, and we were learning about activism in the San Diego area, and we were learning, somebody had come and said, well, you know, we need to remind ourselves that we are not learning to read Spanish as if we were in Mexico. We are in San Diego, or we are in California. So, oh, somebody said, wow, that resonates with me a lot. Yeah. So, well, that's exactly what we are thinking as well about learning language, that we should consider how Spanish language is being used here. And I said, oh, no. I want my kids to speak as if they are going to Madrid or to the UNAM. So for that matter, they were looking outwards. I want them to speak how they're speaking elsewhere, but how about what happens here? And that's something that we have discussing our strand. Is there, for example, a Spanish from here? Because the communities are there. So those are things to consider. Now, I'm going to pose questions for you based on this first principle. What is to learn where you are as distinct from anywhere else that you know? What is different, for example, Sandra, about learning in Watsonville to learning in San Jose? Or to learning in LA? What is different, for example, about Fresno? What is different from wherever you come? So connect with a partner, and what is to learn where you are that's different, that you know, from anywhere else? Discuss. I'm not going to ask you to share that one because I know that each and every one of those things that you discussed could be a bomb that could take us talking forever and ever. But we know that we have a personal relationship with our cultures. I, for one, there are things that drive me crazy and things that I adore. But again, it's also, you are a voice of one, and culture is supposed to represent a collective. So there is a tension there. But eventually something happens when some things make it into the books and others don't. What are you going to do as a teacher? Principle number 3, inward gaze. What is this about? It's about looking inside into the profession. It's about what is to be a world language teacher, as distinct as just being a teacher, regular, in our current day, time, and setting? How is it different from yesterday? We live in moments, we see strikes, we see social movement, we see movements of deprofessionalization, we see banning books, we see teachers being fired for saying this, our profession is contested and not well paid. So we have what is the role that we have in society today? The profession, you would say, one would argue that teaching is by definition a conservative profession, since we are in charge of passing on the genes of the culture and the society at the expense of the taxpayer. One could say that. Other people would say, no, we need to transform. Yeah, well, sure. I mean, here's a question. Would a given system pay certain people to undermine that very system? It's a tension. But then, look at that. That's teaching for me when I came to this country. Foro abierto, open court. What does this mean? Year 2005 means no child left behind. Means being a robot. Means at 10:30, page 35. At 10:32, page 36. At 10:33, page 37. At 10:37, page 38. Read verbatim. And I was hired like that. Are you ready to teach the program as designed with, magic word, fidelity? Because we know it works. Those were the words that I was told in Madrid. I said, sure, hire me. And then I didn't know literally that they meant like literally read the pages on the script and don't come up with your own adornments. And then around that time, then you have other people like Henry Giroux thinking about how teachers should be resisting those movements in which we are just like pawns, replaceable. If we are just pawns reading from a script, AI will replace us. If we are just that flat, I mean, it's just in the making. There's a shortage of teachers. No worries. Silicon Valley has a solution. However, Henry Giroux talks to us about being transformatory intellectuals. Teachers as a profession that is, again, regarded in a certain way, paid in a certain way. How about if we are actually transformatory intellectuals? Pushing against the testing regime, pushing against the regime of standardization, everything the same, everything controllable. And if you don't do it, then we'll replace you, we'll fire you. I would like to go even a little bit further. All my teachers, the teachers that I prepare at San Jose State, I call them all, you need to bring the social linguist in you. Because you know about language, you've experienced it, you know the values that go with that. You are a critical social linguist. The only thing that may be missing is you calling yourself that. Because you deal with power, critical, and you are a social linguist. You deal with language in society, the functions it fulfills, the people it sustains, and the people it oppresses. So are you, my question for you is, how are you a transformatory intellectual, a critical social linguist now? Or not? Come on, don't do that to me. Don't make me cry. Talk to a person next to you for just briefly a minute. Do you feel like a transformatory intellectual and a critical social linguist? Drink a good cup of coffee and then respond. 1 minute. Question is, are you a transformatory intellectual, a critical social linguist? Or else I could have added, or are you replaceable? Replaceable. Are you replaceable or not? What are your reactions? No, wow. Somebody would like to say, do you feel like a transformatory, what is to be a transformatory intellectual or critical social linguist? Somebody feels like that. Or you were indeed going to make me cry. No. The thing is that the difference between being or not being is you saying it. Taking a step up assertively and saying, I am. And this is my value to society. I am not replaceable. You know, I see another keynote here, like literally. Actually, I see 100 keynotes here. I see 100 transformatory intellectuals and critical social linguists, whether you are using those fancy terms or not. Because in reality, the power, the forces are there, you are interacting with them, you are reading the world, and you are teaching language. This is a responsibility that I'm hoping that you are glad assuming. Principle number 4, intersubjectivity. What is that? Connecting with others, connecting heart to heart, the spirit to spirit. The question is, how does the collective sustain the individual and vice versa? Often our profession, with so going fast and running, can be isolating, right? And that's why in our teacher preparation program, we emphasize, let's make friends here. Let's build a stock of friends here for when the rough times comes. But that applies to everybody. That is the intersubjectivity that we want to cultivate. So yesterday I visited the student strand and I got this question that kind of more or less was like this. How can I change a monolingual structure in my school? It was expressed somewhat differently, but the gist was, how can I make my school more plurilingual? The question that how I responded to this was, well, there's approach 1, going solo. If you go solo, what's going to happen? The system is going to do this to you. It's going to expel you like you are an allergen. Out of the system. You are alien to this. You don't function in this system. However, if you go together, you build allies, there's another way of doing things. So that's my basic advice to when I have the student teacher saying, hey, how do I go and make change? Because some come ardent, and I say, oh my goodness. A part of me I say, they could burn out, they could burn out, they could burn out if they really don't take care of themselves in the first few years, because they are gonna clash against the wall. So never go solo, never go solo. That's the key to making change. So the question for you would be, what is an ally for you? Who are your allies, and how do you find them? Because my response was also, when you're trying to make change, sit down and look at the power holders around you. Those who have titles and those who informally still have power in the school. And try to get a reading of who is calling the shots. And then seek allies. Principle number 5, decolonization. What does that mean? Well, we have heard a lot about this, and it sounds really powerful. No to the colonizers, no to the conquistadores, no to the number of things, and some of my ancestors as well. Get out of here. Yes, it's problematic. But at the same time, what does that mean for us? How are we undoing appropriateness? Precisely what we were talking about earlier. Well, we have inherited that, oh, this is the proper way of behaving. Well, according to who in this day and time? How are we identifying colonial underpinnings in our day-to-day practices? And this is very difficult because it's very insidious. It's everywhere. So many things, oh, no, this is simply the way that we have organized schooling. Well, where did this come from? For example, heard of ungrading? Well, those are words and more words that you will be able to see later in the video. I'm going to post it all. It's 5 minutes by Alfie Kohn talking about ungrading. But in reality, this idea of trading, playing with grades, almost like Monopoly, it's inherited. Doesn't need to be like that. Well, some of us want to believe that it doesn't have to. 6, agentic advocacy. How is a world language teacher here and now a transformative intellectual? How are our current policy and practice spaces navigated? Let's look at one way of being a rabbit. In a district, there is a teacher receiving orders from the levels up. All the teachers and the teachers pass on the orders and the instructions to parents and students. This is, the structure is all. You have no power. The structure, everything is coming top down. How about agentic power, in which we have teachers in their classrooms, and then they interact among them, they interact with students and parents, and then still there's going to be levels up, giving some directions, but there is a relationship with them. And there's opportunities to do this. There's opportunities to shape policy even beyond your school. Plenty of those. And what we want to make sure as well is that when all these relationships are happening, there's connections between the community. And in the end, often when we cannot find the power to make some changes, the parents will set the school on fire. And sometimes we need that, because we keep them too far away from the schools. Now, you may not want to be an eagle or a rabbit. You can be this animal kind of in the middle. The skvader is a Swedish mythical animal. I don't think, probably you don't believe in binaries, but I think that you got to take a side. Are you going to be a rabbit or are you going to be an eagle? And 2 pieces of advice for this one. Number 1, I don't receive anything from them, but if one of the steps that I recommend my students, sign up for EdSource. How many people are here on EdSource already? Okay, we need more hands. EdSource is a digest to the point every day about what's happening in education in California and beyond. Very easy to scan, not read if you don't want to, but keeping you awake about what's happening in policy and things across California. Essential, very easy. It doesn't disturb you. I would never want to unsubscribe from this one because it's very readable. And you can even write and send open commentaries to them. You can make your voice heard. And point number 2, find associations that are honest, that are not businesses, that are really fighting for what we care for. For that reason, I am a proud CLTA member. Because I've seen other organizations that run partly like a business, like a PD business. And I've seen the people at CLTA, and they are working hard without interest really for the task, for share, and there's dialogue ongoing. I find myself proud of being a CLTA member because it's one of the cleanest, I would say, organizations that I've ever seen, as opposed to many others that I've seen where there are many crossed interests. So, principle number 7. What is principle number 7? Normally when we present principles, we academics have, okay, this. Principle number 7 is whatever you want it to be. It's what you discuss. It's your questions. Wouldn't it be a little contradictory that I'm saying, okay, let's learn how we learn in communities, but I'm giving you the 7 principles. No, make your principles. Really, like, turn it upside down. What is what you consider necessary to learn where you are? So, you want some of the resources that I mentioned, for example, the article from Henry Giroux on transformative intellectuals, the CSP principles, the article by Sami Alim and Django Paris, they're all there, and I'm certain as well that Don is also going to post it on the website later together with these slides. I just wanted to conclude today with one last sustaining word, regardless of 5, regardless of what you do, regardless of where you're coming from as a speaker, what you speak is beautiful. And tell this to your student as well. What you speak is beautiful. Have a wonderful day, most productive, happy Tuesday.